Yeah, it is Sunday. In fact, it is the Sunday before U.S. elections. So we're gonna have a conversation about election stress because this year is a hot mess. U.S. elections have been a mess for a while now. I mean, depending on your definition of mess, they may have all and your identity, they may have always been a mess. But this year is particularly fraught, and so I am definitely seeing a huge increase in stress and anxiety and insomnia and things in my clients and my friends and just people in general. So I decided that I wanted to go ahead and use some time in stream to answer folks' questions, to talk about ways to cope, ways to organize. This is not your news stations segment. There will be no inferences today that being concerned about literal fascism and genocide is unhealthy or an unreasonable reaction to what's happening. We're not going to do that here. There will not be the idea that it is abnormal to end friendships or relationships if you find out that the person in question is anti your existence and rights. We're not going to suggest that. Part of how this came up is I've seen a lot of really bad news segments lately. I've seen a lot of really bad news segments lately with predominantly white woman mental health practitioners, making it seem as though people are overreacting and perpetuating a lot of avoidance around these things. And like, yes, we do need to have boundaries, which we're going to talk about. We do need to know when to take a step away, which we're going to talk about. But not being willing to stand up for or fight for anything is also unhealthy in a world that demands you fight for everything or be taken advantage of or complicit in horrors. So yeah, that's kind of some background about where all of this came from, and the urge to do this is because I, one, see the need, and I, two, have seen a lot of folks doing it wrong on the local news segments as well. I debated playing some of these segments and breaking them down as to like what the good advice is and what the bad advice is, but honestly, I don't actually think that's helpful. I don't want to platform bad advice, especially bad advice coming from, people I don't know and can't speak to. I've done news interviews before, and I think part of what's hard is sometimes they cut out the nuance. In fact, a lot of times, especially local news that are just like looking for those snippets, if you say anything borderline controversial or anything like too deep, then they cut it out. And so I also don't want to put somebody on blast who I don't know them and don't know how much context was removed, because I've definitely been in that scenario where it was like, okay, cool, we had a 10-minute conversation and 30 seconds made it on air. So, first things first, some rules of engagement, and these are generally how my streams work, but if you're new here, welcome. I am Lamia. I am your local neighborhood mental health cryptid. So I I play a lot of games and I talk a lot about mental health. I have a podcast called Woke Mental Wellness where we play TTRPGs, Black queer folks playing TTRPGs, and then talking about the relationship between what's going on in the narrative and our lived experiences with games and mental health. So that's me. That's who I am. I'm a licensed clinical social worker in the state of Illinois. So that's where I'm coming from. I am also not your therapist. If I am your therapist, we've talked about this. We'll talk during session. All good. Otherwise, I am a therapist. I am not your therapist. Nothing said here is meant to be individualized mental health or medical advice. None of this is constituting engaging in a therapeutic relationship with me or establishing any such relationship. This is all generalized information, my opinions. So take what you will, etc. I forgot what my I think it's just exclamation disclaimer. I have a bunch because of all of these things, and I have to say all these things. You'll see in chat there is a disclaimer. There is a exclamation therapist saying basically what I just said of like, I'm not your therapist. And then there are also all kinds of resources. Exclamation MH list will pull up a fabulous list of resources, both national and some international, that was put together by Professor Reject and Mwatso 93. And so those are there. There's also exclamation resources for additional resources as well, and information about things like mental health first aid, which will also feature in this discussion. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to type questions in chat. If you're over the line, I'm going to tell you that you're over the line, and or a mod may tell you that you're over the line. Hopefully we're all coming at this with compassion. This is not an unbiased space, because like the idea that objectivity exists is itself a bias because we all have lived experience. This is a liberatory abolitionist space. We will be talking about these issues as such. So just know, hi, I'm Black, I'm queer, I have disabilities, I'm a mental health professional and an activist in my community. You're not going to get apologia here. We are going to talk about stress and anxiety, which are natural parts of our experiences that sometimes get really tuned up and cause issues. That is how we're going to talk about this today. If you are voting for Trump, fucking don't. There's no reason to vote for that man. There is absolutely no reason to vote for that man. If you are voting for anyone else, please go vote. Please go vote. If you are voting for Trump, fucking don't. Please stay home. I don't know. I hope that you're able to find someone to talk to you about why I say that if you don't want to listen to me. But I will be honest, this conversation is also not gonna make you necessarily feel better about voting for Harris either. Trump is a catastrophic choice. It is not a choice. He's not an option, in my opinion. In my existence as a person in a Black queer body, that's not even an option here. So please know that. Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, I don't like. I don't like her policies. I don't like the right-wing campaign that she is running. I do not like the erasure of trans people. I do not like the genocide that she is committing. Part of what feels so bad generally, and I'm going to get into generalized things slowly here, but I want to be very upfront to anybody and everybody here about where I stand, because positionality is important, right? When we talk about anything, positionality is important. If you are presenting information and you're not naming your positionality and you're presenting information as unbiased or objective, you need to re-look at how you present information. Even when you're working with things like physics and chemistry, there's positionality there. We're coming from an angle, we have a lens. We have a school of teaching or philosophy or whatever that we're coming from. So that is why I'm also being very careful to name and note my positionality as we're having this conversation, because also politics are really uncomfortable for people. That's part of why this conversation is needed, and why everything's so heightened right now is particularly in the United States, we like to ignore things. We like to bury things under the rug, and we like to choose dirty pain as a society. We're an entire country built off of genocide and slavery, and we don't like to talk about it, and we have not adequately atoned for that. We're an entire society that is built off of groups of radical extremist Christian colonizers, and we don't like to atone for that, and it's coming home to roost. And part of the difficulty and part of what heightens our anxiety and our stress is this friction between silence, which is a tenet of white supremacy culture, right? So we have this tenet of silence, like be nice, polite, don't talk about things. If it's uncomfortable, don't talk about it. That's kind of sometimes spoken, sometimes unspoken part of our culture in the United States, and in, honestly, in a lot of spaces and a lot of places. You'll also note, because this is the United States elections, we're talking from I am in the United States. We are talking about the United States. We are coming from a U.S. Lens and standpoint. The exceptionalism and centricity of the United States of America is a global problem. That our elections are so impactful across the globe and can determine how much or how many people on the other side of the planet die is also a problem. This is a problem of empire, because as someone who is sitting in the United States, I am in the seat of empire. If we're talking Hunger Games, I'm sitting in the Capitol. That is a problem. That fusion of issues and the desire to not talk about it and the emphasis on not talking about things is what heightens our anxiety and what is making this election so hard for so many people, especially if you try to talk to people who usually consider them apolitical. That ability is disappearing. That ability to call yourself, I'm apolitical. Black and Indigenous revolutionaries and activists for years have been saying, baby, if you don't do politics, politics is going to do you. And it is. It's doing us right now. And that feels shitty. Americans, Brian says, Americans like to pretend that politics only matter when elections come up. It's part of the privilege we've been taught, especially as critical race theory and other conscious education has been aggressively scrubbed. Yes, right? And so when we think about this election and we're talking about stress and anxiety, part of that, and part of the people who are the most stressed right now are the people who come out every 4 years and pretend like that's all they need to do. And part of what people are fighting about right now is they don't like the idea that that existence is going away. As though the presidential elections, because keep in mind, the United States has elections all the fucking time. We have so many elections. We have local local elections, which consist of city or township elections, potentially school board elections. We have state elections and county elections, and then every 2 years we have congressional elections and other elections. We have primaries to our elections. We are we have so many elections. We have so many elections all the time here. However, the big election that people come out of the woodwork for is our presidential elections. This also is this pattern of it being every 4 years that things really kind of pop off is also harmful in heightening our anxiety and our stress, because it's not how our system works, but B, you've got all these folks that only get whipped up every 4 years, and you've got a lot of people who care more about celebrity endorsements than they do about actually being informed and figuring out the issues. So yeah, it's the so let this be a starting point. If you're somebody who has been a 4-year politics person, then maybe let this be a start to getting involved all year, every year, and finding what you care about so that it's not as much a shock to the system. Now, when I say as much a shock to the system, you're also going to notice, if you look around you and you're engaged in your community, those of us who are involved all year, every year, are also exhausted, and we're also stressed, and we're also not having a great time, because this election is bad. This election is terrible, especially because this election comes a year and a month after the increase of genocide in Palestine, and the United States has done nothing to stop it and everything to commit it. The United States is side by side with Israel committing genocide, supplying the weapons, protecting the genocidal state. And that has, I've done streams before about Congo and Israel and Palestine and these things before, so go check those out. If they're not available, I'll have to re-upload them, but that's fine. As humans, we are not designed to live like this. When I say live like this, that includes a lot of things, but what I'm pointing to holistically here, as an anomaly that really probably shouldn't be happening, is everything happening all at once, not talking about it, not having any space to slow down, grieve, do anything about it, and then being pushed to go, and then being told you have to be complicit in this no matter what you do. You have to be part of this. And that's where we're at right now. So this is gonna sound silly, but I'm gonna really fast do a quick and incomplete recap of the last 4 years since the last presidential election in the United States. We voted out a man who desperately, deeply wanted to be a fascist dictator, and not only a fascist dictator, but one that killed everybody he disliked, killed and or imprisoned, right? And the United States got him out of office, And then he promptly threw a coup, or attempted coup, which was January 6, 2021. By that point, we'd already been in a pandemic for a year and a half. A pandemic that our government very promptly, once the predominant people being impacted became Black and brown people, started ignoring and started pulling funding away from stopping. So we were already a year and a half into a pandemic that year and a half, depending on where you count by, because some of it's like the early started in 2019, but the pandemic wasn't declared until towards the end of Q1 2020, right? So regardless, we're deep in a pandemic that has killed hundreds of thousands, if not millions, by that point of people, right? We had, depending on where you live, you had maybe a couple weeks, a couple months of a shutdown, and depending on your job. By and large, shit didn't really stop. You moved indoors, you moved to working from home, you moved to Zoom, all these things. We had an election, voted out the Cheeto, and then had a coup attempt. Coup attempt failed, people died, but there was disagreement on whether or not the coup was a coup, which we have proceeded to argue about for 4 years. Some people, your low-ranking people, have been arrested and charged with treason and other lesser crimes, etc. But the Cheeto has been convicted on some things, but sentencing was postponed, and now he's being allowed to run for president again. In that time, in those past 4 years, so we've got 2021, we also were just coming off, the election was coming off of George Floyd and the summer of racial reckoning, if anybody remembers that. Again, we didn't really slow down. We didn't actually change all that much. There was a lot of performative shit. So we go through all that. We continue having a pandemic that is being ignored while people are still dying and getting sick. This illness in particular also causes heart damage, brain damage, liver damage, can cause premature diabetes, can cause aneurysms and heart attacks and all sorts of premature death, even from a mild infection, right? And we have very little information data on how long those effects last. We do know that they're cumulative and people are getting infected multiple times. Our government allows protections to fully lapse. So people start losing their insurance. The economy tanks, or starts to tank. And so we go through layoffs in multiple areas. We go through massive issues of inflation, housing bubbles popping, all kinds of things happening. Again, we don't slow down. We're told we as a society try to keep going. Then last year, we have an escalation in full-blown genocide in Israel, Gaza. Again, we don't slow down. We don't change anything. Keep going. The United States is supplying weapons. The administration ignores any wrongdoing that Israel's doing and focuses on, well, Hamas attacked them, not noting that Israel is a settler colonial state, which is not actually supposed to be allowed, and that this didn't start on October 7th. It started fucking 75 years ago when, again, another genocide happened in order to create Israel. So we're going through all of this. We're going through pandemics. We're going through natural disasters. You'll note I haven't even attempted to list all of the fires, hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, blizzards, and other natural disasters that have been happening across the country where people are not getting the assistance they need. So everyone's holding all of this in their bodies to varying levels, right? We have more Black folks murdered by police on TV. We're seeing genocide on TV. The issues with Israel and Gaza also bring to forefront other genocides that have been ongoing for ages. More things pop off in Haiti as well. And so we get more information about Congo. More people get more information about Congo and Sudan and Tigray and Haiti and the Uyghurs in China and so many other genocides. And at risk of escalating to genocide issues and humanitarian crises. My specialty is trauma, so let's talk about that for a second here. If all these things that I just listed have you feeling in your body like you're tight, like your chest is tight, and like maybe you're getting a headache, and like maybe it's hard to breathe, or you have to slow down and take a deep breath because you're noticing your muscles and everything tensing and kind of constricting, yes, because that's a lot. And these are just reminders of a fraction of the big things that have happened since our last presidential election, right? This is stored in our bodies. So when you see reports on the news about, election stress is on par, but in slightly worse than 2020, but far worse than any other election, presidential election year previously. Yeah, because we weren't measuring things like this in the 30s. And so can't necessarily compare it to that, but we're just layering on top, thing on thing on thing. And those aren't even the things that may or may not have happened in your own personal life. So, affirmation here. I don't need to know who you are to assume that when I say you're going through a lot and you have been through a lot in the last 4 years, that's pretty much true, no matter who you are. So take a moment and sit with the affirmation of, I have been through a lot over the last 4 years. And for yourself, if you want to, again, I'm not your therapist. You don't have, even if I was your therapist, you don't have to do this, but check in with yourself for a hot second there. Part of managing all of this shit is acknowledging that, like, hey, we've been through a lot, and a lot of this shit we can't do anything about. A lot of this is outside our locus of control. And so allowing ourselves to connect, if you can, if you notice that you're like, trying to connect with my body feels horrible and makes me want to panic. Okay, chill, back off, note that for yourself, but give yourself some compassion. When we're talking about election anxiety and stress and beyond, right? When we're talking about this kind of macro level anxiety, the first thing is compassion. You're not going to be able to manage these things if you are blaming and shaming and hating yourself all the time. So practice taking a moment and affirming, this is a lot. This world, this fuckery, this mess, these genocides, these humanitarian crises, these natural disasters, these layoffs, these financial crises, are a lot. Take a breath and acknowledge that this is a lot. That's the first step. When you start, whether you're scrolling, whether you're watching TV, whether you're laying in bed at night and start kind of freaking out a little bit, first step is take a breath and acknowledge, yeah, this is a lot. It's really tempting, especially with that last one, if you're like laying in bed or if you're just like watching TV and you start feeling kind of anxiety or panic or heartburn rising, it's really easy to be like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Nothing's even happening. Pause. It's really, so what I was saying is really easy and it's really tempting to start blaming yourself if nothing is happening in that moment, or it feels like nothing is happening in that moment, because the lie of linearity is that something has to be noticeable and going on for you to feel a thing, and that's not true. That's inaccurate. So if something that I walk clients through and I encourage folks to try out for themselves, if you're noticing that you're really anxious and you're blaming yourself a lot and you're like, nothing's even happening, what the fuck is wrong with me? Hold on, pause. You're feeling anxious. Take a tiered approach here. Is anything happening in the moment? Obviously, we're talking about a situation where you're blaming yourself. It doesn't seem like anything's happening in the moment. Okay, that's tier 1, is absolute immediate present, right? That's the surface. Okay, next thing. What happened today? What has happened in that day? What thing did you read online? What thing were you looking at an hour ago? You know, what stream were you watching 6 hours ago? Did anything happen that day that landed wrong? That's the next level, right? That day and the kind of things directly associated what you've seen, heard that day. That's next. So we've got the present, we've got the day, like the things that you may or may not have seen, heard, witnessed that day. Okay. If the answer to that is no, or the answer to that doesn't feel like enough for you, 1, define enough. Define what the fuck enough is. 2, move on to the next level. What has been going on over the last week, couple of weeks for you? And has anything reminded you of that? Or for anyone close to you, right? So I like to watch, there's a show called Found. And it's about a person who was kidnapped as a child and now tries to find missing people who the police basically ignore, right? I watched that. I've seen all of season 1. Season 2 is airing right now, and normally it's fine, not a huge deal. But sometimes if I'm feeling bad or really stressed and I try to go watch that show, I get the beginnings of an anxiety attack. Now, the tempting thing to do would be to be like, the fuck? I watch this show all the time. What is wrong with me? Pause. Take a step back. Take a breath. How am I feeling today? I had some issues with work and clients have been really heavy. Oh, hold on. Clients have been really heavy. So my threshold's already lowered, right? What happened on the show I was just watching? Oh, there were, it had to do with somebody who was adopted being, having parental issues or whatever. Oh, hold on. That's a thing for me personally, right? And then it, or the show showed a really shitty politician and we're in an election year. Oh, that's also a thing, right? And we start to piece together this puzzle that doesn't have to be and frequently is not linear. So when you're noticing yourself ratcheting up on anxiety and things for around the election, don't forget, it doesn't have to be linear. Just because George Floyd protests were 4 years ago doesn't mean that seeing rhetoric of presidential candidates talking about wanting to fund police more might not ratchet your anxiety up if you had experiences where you were kettled or, harmed by police 4 years ago, right? These things can come back. Major life events can flood things back to us. So, managing election-related anxiety and stress. 1, compassion. You may need to affirm yourself. You may need to take a moment, take a step back, take a breath. Hold on. Why am I blaming myself? Who is that serving? That's another golden question that I encourage people to use, right? Who is this serving? If the answer is not what you want to be serving in the moment, then that's a cue for us to slow down, take a hot minute, and rethink how we're approaching something. Rethink, if we're ignoring our body. Sometimes, and this is going to sound corny and some people are going to hate it, right? This does not invalidate your experience, but sometimes we really do need to breathe and go for a walk. Sometimes we really do need to stretch and do some yoga and reconnect with our body in order to understand ourselves. That doesn't mean that depression doesn't exist, right? Anyone who tells you otherwise is full of shit. But what it does mean is that we are a whole system. Ourselves are a system, just like our societies are systems and created and made up by systems, right? When you're in school, you learn about the circulatory system and the respiratory system and all the systems of the body. That also works mentally, right? I'm not going to get too deep into like parasympathetic, sympathetic, mind, emotions, spiritual, etc. There's lots of different systems. There's lots of different theories. You can come pay me to talk to you about that later. But the main thing here for this, and what is important for this conversation in managing and getting to know your stress and anxiety, which is kind of this first step, this compassion and this kind of breakdown, is that we're systems. Those systems do not always work linearly, and that's okay. It doesn't mean anything's wrong with you, right? It doesn't mean that the thing that is wrong is you, right? That's also part of the consideration here for this election and really any major world event is white Western mental health has the habit of blaming the individual. Hey, if you feel shitty because you don't have a major candidate for president that is anti-genocide, yes. Being upset about that is appropriate, right? That's a normal reaction. Normal. We're not gonna hop on that train. Okay, but that is a reaction that we can expect, right? The abnormal of that is having no feelings, right? Like not being a little bit anxious about what's happening right now, I would consider to be the abnormal. I think anyone who's paying attention is worried one way or another, right? I don't have to disagree. I don't have to agree with why you're worried. Right now, what we're talking about is that you're worried, right? So, first couple of steps. Now, as you start to calm yourself down in the moment, right? Stepping a little bit outside, a little further away from the instant moment of like decompression and thinking through. Longer term, getting involved is probably going to be helpful. Powerlessness escalates anxiety, right? And so you heard me earlier say a lot of this stuff is outside our locus control, and part of the solve is acknowledging that. But in acknowledging that, that doesn't mean that we fall into despair or disillusionment, right? The idea of, oh, well, there's nothing we can do, so fuck it, hands off, whatever. I've also talked extensively on stream and on other things about the movement cycle and how we have to be really careful. That's true here. Just because you're stressed, just because you're anxious doesn't mean give up. Resmaa Menakem, author of The Quaking of America, author of My Grandmother's Hands, author of Love Between Monsters, I think it is. Basically, author of a lot of things, but also a therapist, mental health worker, talks about clean pain versus dirty pain. This is also really relevant to our discussion because clean pain is what you may have also heard of as like growing pains. And so for growing pains, right, when we think of growing pains, that's the pain we get as we're doing something that's still important to do, right? You get growing pains when you're lifting, right? We get growing pains when you're learning dance or sports, right? Those are the pain that is. Oh, we're getting ready to have a ad break just so that everyone knows. So what we'll do is we'll pause with the clean pain, dirty pain while we're doing ads. What I'm gonna say is that I'm gonna encourage everyone to take a breath. I'm gonna encourage everyone to take a moment, get some water. Because we have been going for about an hour, and breaks also an important thing here. And so we've got about 2 more minutes of ads, but regardless, these are good practices. So during ad breaks, I'll make sure that we are slowing down, practicing slowing down. Maybe letting your eyes close and noticing whether or not your eyes feel fatigued. Eye fatigue can be a notice to like look away from screens, look away from whatever you're doing for a moment. All good things to do to reconnect with your body, to process, to slow it down, so that you can understand yourself and respond instead of simply reacting. A lot of the media we're given is very much to make us reactionary. If we can slow ourselves down, we can decrease our anxiety. We can decrease our, stress a little bit, enough to decide how we move forward. I am also gonna put my support links down here while we're in ads, because I'm not gonna lie, the last couple of protests I've gone to wiped out my street medic kit. So I need about $90. I need about $90 to replace my street medic kit, because that is a thing that I do, and that is part of my own, like, how I handle myself, Hi, cat. This is Enzo. I don't know if y'all can see him, but yeah. So ads are finishing up. Welcome back, folks that were on ad break. I actually paused us so that you didn't miss the discussion of clean pain versus dirty pain. And so what I'm gonna do during ad breaks is I'm just going to do some meditative stuff, maybe show some of the techniques that can be used, so that you're not missing key content essentially in this discussion. So clean pain versus dirty pain. As I was saying, clean pain is a kind of pain that we attribute with like growing pains, the kind of pain of like something that needs to happen but it still hurts. So if you're learning dance, right, especially floor dance, like it hurts, you're bruised, you're all over the place, whatever. If you're learning football, if you're learning whatever, that's clean pain. Psychologically, clean pain is the kind of pain that comes from addressing hard stuff. So if you've harmed someone, for example, and having accountability conversations, that can hurt, right? That can require a lot of processing and crying and things like that. That's okay. Because at the end, hopefully, we've atoned and made things better and set new boundaries and done these things, and we come out with a stronger relationship, right? Dirty pain is the kind of pain of ignoring stuff. It's the kind of pain that happens when we don't deal with something. So everything that's happening in the United States right now, it's the kind of pain of when you, if you break the cookie jar and then you try to hide it, and then maybe somebody else gets blamed for it, and now they're mad too, and now you feel really bad, but now you're afraid to say anything because now other people are getting hurt by it, and it just kind of compounds more and more and more, and then eventually you end up having to do the clean pain anyway. But now there's so much more of it, or you just keep hurting because you don't face it, but it's actually hurting you more, but you're not having to deal with that single thing, so you call it easier. That's dirty pain, right? So earlier I mentioned if it doesn't feel good to connect with your body, then like back off. That's because I'm not your therapist. We're not in therapy, right? I'm not gonna work you through that because it, like, clinically, like, I'm not taking that liability. That's not my place. Go talk to someone, a therapist, a body worker, a Reiki person, acupuncture, whoever feels good for you. Go do that. Connecting with our bodies is important. It's important to managing anxiety. It's one of the biggest, most helpful ways to manage anxiety is to be able to connect with your body and breathe and check in, right? Now, that clean pain versus dirty pain, again, micro in the moment, that means addressing what's going on, addressing that, like, even if you don't like it, maybe you gotta stop playing that game or stop watching that show that's triggering you right now until things calm down a little bit. There are certain, like, games and shows that, like, I just won't do if I'm feeling a certain type of way. And that's okay. And that's important to know. When it comes to election stress and anxiety, that may mean that your boundaries around how much you watch news, how much you scroll social media, you may decrease how much you're doing those things. You may make a new account that only follows pet accounts and cute animal accounts. Enzo. boundaries are that next piece, right? Once you've figured out what things are, right? What are the triggers? What is happening? What has spiked that anxiety? Taking a breath, right? Breathing, sensory countdowns. You can look these things up, right? So box breathing would be, if you're taking notes, right? Box breathing is something to Google or ask your mental health professional about. Sensory countdown is something to ask about. What are some other ones that are yeah, I'm gonna stick with those for now. Meditations can be good and helpful to look up and talk about. There are different kinds of meditations. A lot of people think the only meditation is you have to clear your brain, and a lot of folks can't do that for various reasons, or it doesn't feel good to do that for them. It's not the only kind of meditation. That's not the only kind of mindfulness. The idea that it is again a due to theft and bastardization of these practices. Dancing can be a form of meditation. Drumming can also help. Humming is really good for anxiety. If your anxiety is the kind of anxiety or panic attacks that are the kind that make you want to scream, and you're in a place where you can't, humming can actually take place of screaming. And it's doable basically anywhere, right? And so a big deep breath in and just a hum can help with that and can help get through that somatic sensation of needing to scream if you can't scream in the moment. So taking a moment to get to know yourself and what works for you. Those are the individual pieces, right? Those are the acute, I'm about to have a panic attack, having a panic attack, not sleeping. Oh, progressive muscle relaxation is the other thing, which is basically paired breathing and body tension. It's the thing where you breathe in, you tense your body, and then you slowly release your body tension as you release the breath, and you may do it in sections. That's progressive muscle relaxation. Something else you can look up that really helps, especially if you're experiencing insomnia around your stress and anxiety. The good thing about this conversation is a lot of these things work outside of the election too. This is just the obviously the conversation we're having is about the election because the election's on Tuesday. So that's the dealing with the very acute stuff. Let's talk some more about this clean pain, dirty pain, and control issues. A lot of stress is the idea that no matter what we do, we're fucked. I've heard that so many times. I think I'm guilty of saying that sometimes because it feels like it, right? It's just, there's no, which can be sometimes can just be shorthand, but other times it is nihilism. So let's also acknowledge we got to watch out for nihilism. Nihilism only assists the status quo. So instead of going for that, we are gonna want to talk about affirmation here is, yeah, there are no easy answers. There is no one and done. You can't just vote and be done with it. If you're actually interested in making things better and fighting for issues like anti-genocide, issues like environment, human rights, no cop city, abortion, all of these things. There's so many things, right? There is no one and done. There's nothing on the ballot this year. There's no big presidential candidate on the ballot this year that's gonna fix it. or that's even trying to promise to fix it. That, again, feels shitty. It feels shitty. And it's okay. It's okay that it feels shitty. Hey, Shears. Hey, Puddle. It's okay for that to feel shitty. Acknowledging that it feels shitty also can help. Because if we acknowledge and affirm why we're feeling shitty, we are less likely to blame ourselves for something that's not outside the norm, that's not our fault. This feels shitty because it is shitty. We don't feel shitty because we're doing something wrong. We feel shitty because it's a shitty situation. So then find what you want to focus in on. I've said this before. I'm going to say it again. I'll probably say it a million times, like throughout my life. Part of the upside of being a part of a system, a part of a collective, is it means you don't have to do everything yourself. We are interconnected. So no, there are no easy solutions. You're not gonna vote and be done with it if you actually care about these things. You're not gonna vote and feel good. Especially with a presidential election. I know a lot of people who there's basically the catastrophic result and the shitty result. And that's kind of it. And that sucks. But if you love animals and you love the environment because you want to make sure we stop losing biodiversity, both in our flora and fauna, and losing our habitat, consider this your call to action. Find the organization you want to work with. Find the people, the small group, build a community where you can do your part. Because I'll tell you right now, no issue is a single issue. If you want to talk about the environment, that immediately leads to refugee crises and climate refugees. It leads to environmental racism and just like so many adjoined concerns and issues. So if the concern is, well, if I don't do everything, then I'm not going to be informed, blah, blah. No, start with what you like. Start with something you like, because if you start with something you hate, you're not going to do it. It's gonna be like all those goddamn New Year's resolutions you make and never work, because that's not how goal making works. I hate to tell you, but New Year's resolutions, if you just make this big grandiose statement, is not gonna work. You have to break it down. So break it down. If your goal is to be more involved, define what that means for yourself. How do you want to be more involved? What are your boundaries around involvement? Because again, being a martyr's not sexy. If you don't have to martyr yourself, don't, because we need people to fight. we need people to stuff envelopes. We need people to make phone calls. We need people to send emails. We need people to carry chairs. We need people to volunteer for childcare, like during the movement and actions, right? Like, we need people. We need you. Things being shitty doesn't mean we don't need you. It's really easy to feel really depressed, potentially even suicidal, in talking about these things because it feels so big and it feels too big. And slow down. When it starts feeling too big, that's your cue. Slow down. Even if you're just like, well, I care about the election and I want to make sure it's just. Cool. You know what most places need every year and have a shortage of? Poll watchers. People who help run the election. They need those. you can volunteer or get a like part-time job with your local election board. I guarantee you, if you have something you're interested in and you're like, I don't know how to get into this, ask a question in chat. I bet you I'll be able to help point you in a direction, right? Shears says, especially when you're doing local elections in an area you know the vote is shitty and the one everyone votes because no one runs against them. Yeah, right. If if depending on where you're at in life and what you're interested in, run for a thing. Run for an office. Get somebody to run for an office. Right? Like, president is not the only office. It's not even, like, part of what's frustrating about the presidential election being like the only one general public pays attention to is the president important? Yes. But also, as we've seen, if the president is gridlocked, they can't do a whole lot. If the president gets gridlocked by the judiciary and the legislative, if your governor gets gridlocked by the legislative and the judiciary, like, they're kind of fucked. So, does a lot need to change? Yes, but be the change you want to see. Find the thing you're interested in. Also, just we've been going for a little over an hour, so a reminder, you're very free and encouraged to ask questions in chat. You can whisper questions if you're shy. If you're lurking, thanks for being here. I'm Lamia. Hi. Exclamation therapist, exclamation resources, exclamation mental health list, and disclaimer are the kind of relevant ones today. So yes. Hi, everybody. Welcome in. Thank you for that. Hydrate. Also, yes, please stay hydrated. Please drink water. Coffee is not hydrating. Drink water. Just FYI. So, also, if you are somebody who is anxious, please know that you may want to decrease your caffeine intake. Beloveds, friends, comrades. A lot of people are kind of sleeping on how much your caffeine intake is fucking you over. Even if you don't feel it, don't forget, caffeine has like a 6-hour half-life. So if you're drinking caffeine in the afternoon and you're anxious, and then you're like, hey, I don't understand why I can't sleep. Hey, girly pop. Hey, cute boy. I have news for you. It's the caffeine. It's the fucking caffeine. Yes. As Sleazy and Shears are saying in chat, decaf is your friend. Herbal teas are your friends. Sugar lasts less time than caffeine. Still not great. I still wouldn't encourage you to drink like sugary juice or soda before bed, but I will say it does not last as long as caffeine. So if you're noticing your anxiety is super high, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but you may want to cut out caffeine for at least a little while. And if you drink a lot of caffeine, you may want to step yourself down so you don't go through like withdrawals. But again, that's another of the like on the personal level, watch yourself, be really careful. Because it just makes it worse. Similarly with screens. If you're looking at something that is backlit with blue light, before bed and stuff, like it's making it harder to sleep. It makes it harder for your brain to shut down, to slow down. So just a note there, coming back to getting involved, right, to these longer term ideas and solutions, right? Finding what you're interested in and starting with that, right? Boundarying your time and learning, right? Take the urge. So we saw this with 2020. We saw this with the summer of 2020, right? All the activists were like, we'll see how long this lasts, because everyone did the same thing they always did. Everyone jumped in and joined 5 book clubs, and then they, started taking all these trainings and doing all these things. And then they got tired and they were like, well, I feel bad, so this must be bad. Not all pain is bad. Not all pain is bad. Not all discomfort is bad. Sitting with your discomfort is part of this process. If we want things to be better, we're going to be uncomfortable for a while. The unwillingness to be uncomfortable is part of why we're here, right? The push to vote blue no matter who is very clear is backfiring on us, because now they're not even promising us things. They're not even promising us universal health care anymore, or like the basic things that everybody liked. And that's scary. And it's okay to be afraid. We just don't want to always act out of fear, right? Part of this whole thing today, if you walk away with just one thing today, it's okay to feel. It's okay to feel. Your feelings, your emotions are real, but it doesn't mean they're correct. And it doesn't mean that's the only thing you want to make a decision from. If you're not angry, I'm confused about where you're at. If you're not angry on some level, right? However, if you're angry and that's the only thing you're listening to, and you are not paying attention to the grief that is hand in hand with that anger, it's really easy to get you to do something heinous like support genocide and or vote for Trump. That's why everyone's trying to make you angry, because a lot of times we're not taught how to effectively manage and harness our anger. We're not taught how to honor our sacred rage in a way that is not harming other people. So if you take one thing from today, please stop being afraid of your emotions. Learn to sit with them. Learn to be okay with discomfort so that you can process and respond instead of just reacting. Because the reactionary shit is what makes people go, well, I lost money over the last 4 years, so I'm going to vote for the other guy. Child, please. No. There's more to it, because again, part of the danger of only paying attention every 4 years and only paying attention to president, or paying predominantly attention to president, is that you forget all the other parts of the system that resulted where we are. Now, after this election, you may or may not decide that you want to get involved with ensuring that we're never stuck in this 2-party option situation ever again. More power to you. Go ahead. You may decide that you want to join the fight for the environment. More power to you. Go for it. Find what is interesting to you. And then find the people that is also what they're doing. Community is a huge part of long-term stress and anxiety management. Community care is really what we're all needing. If you look at what happened with the hurricanes in the Southeast over the last month and a half, you'll see all kinds of stories where, community care workers got help to people faster or rebuilt a temporary bridge faster than the government did, because right now things are a problem and it sucks. But the choose your own adventure from it sucks is it sucks, so I'm gonna help change it, or it sucks, so fuck it, right? Those are kind of the forks in the road. We should change it. We should work together. Find your people. Find your community. What does it mean for you? Who are your people? Do you know who your people are? If not, that's your starting place, is to find your people and start to kind of determine how to build that village for yourself. Building a village of people who, when you're sick, will bring you soup. When they're sick, you'll bring soup, or you'll order it to be delivered, right? Part of being in a society means that we help each other. That's our failing point in the US right now, is on a national level, no one wants to help each other anymore, and we've lost the eye towards global solidarity. Heck, even school board meetings can be something to get involved in. Yes, because they can be a way to help the next generation of folks. Yes. So here in Chicago, we finally got the right to elect a school board. Our school board hasn't been elected, right? A couple of years ago, we got an elected police oversight commission, right? So again, even if you are disenchanted, disenfranchised as a voter, because the Electoral College disenfranchises a lot of folks when it comes to voting for the presidential election, which is another way to fuel the nihilism and the disillusionment. But your local elections, your vote 150% counts for that. Your professional organization, your vote 150% counts for that, right? If you live in a state that is already hardlined, yeah, I get it. I get why you're like, who the fuck cares about voting? Because you get sick of just being like, yeah, my vote doesn't really matter. But that's only the presidential election. And also, we should abolish the Electoral College so that that's not true anymore. If you are like, I can't bring myself to vote for either of these people in the presidential election because neither of their policies are things that I can stand behind, please, for the love of God, go vote for your local stuff. Do you know how many judges are on the ballots? Injustice Watch. Go to Injustice Watch if you have not voted yet. I'm a person who I wait till election day, because if I try to vote early, I have to go a couple miles away. If I wait till election day, I go half a block down the street to my polling place. So I vote on election day. If you've not voted yet, if you've not returned your ballot yet, vote for the judges. Go to Injustice Watch and do the work of looking up the judges so that you can, vote retain or reject on the judges. A lot of what's happening right now and what's being allowed to happen is because there are judges on the bench who should not be there. I know my ballot has judges whose partner is a cop that has cost the city $9 million in malfeasance charges, and the judge has done a bunch of shady shit, right? They're still on the bench. They're up for re-election. I need to go vote them motherfuckers out, because that my vote does count for. The propositions to reopen mental health centers in my area, my vote counts for that. Your vote counts for those things. In Nevada and California, slavery is on your ballot. Slavery is on your ballot. The note of slavery is abolished except for in instances of convicted crime. That piece is on the ballot to be removed if you're in, I believe it's California and Nevada. Go vote. Remove slavery from your state constitution in its entirety. Please. Mental health assistance is on the ballot in a lot of places. Go vote. Please, for the love of God, go vote. If you take two things from this stream, stop being afraid of your emotions and go vote. We may need to change this whole system and how it all works so that we have an actual democracy. But I can tell you right now, your local shit is still a democracy. So please vote. Vote for your school board. Vote for your judges. Vote against slavery if you're in Nevada and California. Vote for access to voting for people in your state. The Supreme Court just allowed Virginia to purge voters mid-election. Vote. If you can't vote, if you can't bring yourself to vote for for either of these presidential candidates, like, I understand where you're coming from. I get it, and it sucks. But please, God, go vote for everything else. Go vote for your representatives. Go vote for your Congress people, both state and federal. Go vote for your local things, your county commissioners, your water reclamation districts. Because if we want to make the system better, we do have to start somewhere. And if you're not used to, like, if you don't want to fight a war, it starts with voting. And getting the pressure from the bottom up to stop whatever fuckery is happening at the top is kind of the thing at the moment. I'm gonna check chat because I see we're in an ad break here. So again, please remember to breathe. A deep breath with a pause in the middle and an exhale that is slightly longer than your inhale communicates to your brain that you're okay, that you can calm down. So please be aware of that. Let me catch up with chat here. That's the biggest impact on justice in your local area. Adjudication is the last stop. Yes, vote for your local judges, please. And yes, confirmed by folks in California that are in chat. Slavery is on your ballot. Please vote against it. Please vote to remove those exemptions if you're in Nevada and California. Cheers. Here on Long Island, clean water was on the ballot. We have a history of no access to clean water stuff, and that has not been updated in decades. So, Long Island, New York, or New Jersey. I think there's Long Island in both. Please, God, someone help me. I'm not East Coast. But please go vote. Vote for your own clean water access. Vote for your energy access. AI's fucking it up. It's fucking up your energy prices and access. That's on the ballot in some spaces. Some places, it's on the ballot whether or not, like, tech companies can buy energy infrastructure to take over to fund AI and shit. Like, please vote. We're also trying to add California, you are also trying to add marriage equality to your constitution, so please go vote for that. Yeah, vote for people who will fucking fund the school lunches so kids aren't hungry. Vote for folks who will keep books in schools, please. Yes, Long Island's part of New York, so New York State, please go vote. Everyone go vote. Also, I have a list. I got 29 seconds, so I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna find the list, but there's a list of states that you can register to vote same day. So that's what's gonna be next, is even if you're not registered to vote, right? Part of the stress is figuring out a lot of these things, and we're gonna get there too, because we also have to talk about post. Welcome back from ads. We basically did a please, for the love of God, go vote. Vote for your judges, vote for your school boards, vote for your clean water, vote against slavery if you're in Nevada and California. If you're in New York, vote for your clean water. If you're in Illinois, vote for mental health care. Vote for infrastructure and roads. If you are not registered to vote and you're hearing this and you're like, fuck, I do want to vote now. I'm going to tell you, and I'm still looking. Yeah, here it is. I'm going to tell you whether or not you are in a state where we can fix that. So if you are in California, Colorado, Connecticut, Washington, D.C., Hawaii, Idaho, Illinois, Iowa, Maine, Maryland, Michigan, Minnesota, Montana, Nevada, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Utah, Vermont, Washington, Wisconsin, or Wyoming, you can register to vote same day. You can go register to vote tomorrow or Tuesday and still vote in the election, again, because this is important. And because, again, we're talking about stress and anxiety. And if you're like, shit, I fucked up. Well, you haven't yet if you are in one of these states. And voting is such a mess right now. And with the ballot box burnings and the Virginia voter purges mid-elections, like, it's and the lack of accessibility for voting for folks who are hard of hearing and hard of sight sometimes. Like, I get it. But if you're in one of these states, you can still register and vote same day. California, Colorado, Connecticut, DC, Hawaii, Idaho, Illinois, Iowa, Maine, Maryland, Michigan, Minnesota, Montana, Nevada, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Utah, Vermont, Washington, Wisconsin, or Wyoming. You can still register to vote. Please do. Deep breath. Now, we've talked about getting involved. We've talked about like those in the moment ways to manage your stress and anxiety. We've talked about getting involved as a way to manage some of your stress and anxiety as well. Let's talk about election day. Let's talk about Tuesday. If you're in my part of Wisconsin, vote for school building management so that kids don't have to learn and teachers don't have to teach in buildings that are falling apart. Position for New York, found the Proposition 2 for updated sewers and clean water. Fun fact, Long Island doesn't have sewers all the way through. Prop 1 is abortion access in New York. So in Long Island, New York. So again, there's a lot of really, really, really important stuff that is on your ballots, no matter where you're living. Vote for your local stuff. Don't just skip it because you hate the presidential candidates. Don't do it. You can write in for those. You can do whatever is not voting for Trump for the presidential. Like, locally, you need you and your community needs you. If you are someone who can't vote, you can volunteer to help people vote who can. Because unfortunately, there's a lot of disenfranchised folks, minors, people in several states, people who've been convicted of crimes, of felonies, aren't allowed to vote. And especially with the slew of prosecuting prosecuting protesters. I don't give a fuck if you're peaceful or not. Prosecuting protesters, not like the anti-cop city folks, the stop cop city folks and things, folks protesting against police violence. Some of those folks, if you're in a state where folks convicted of a felony can't vote, they're not allowed to vote now. So please do what you can, how you can. Shit doesn't get this fucked only at the national level. We gotta do all levels. So, election day. It's really tempting to refresh and stay up all night. Make a plan now. Part of managing your anxiety during elections is, again, community. And some of that community is finding people that you can hold each other accountable and be like, hey, we're actually going to have a slumber party. We're going to take Wednesday off. We're going to have a slumber party, and we're going to make sure none of us stay up. Phones, we're going to lock them away, and we're going to do literally anything else. And we'll do a group check whenever. More than likely, let's be really honest, more than likely, the results are not gonna come Tuesday night. They're not. It is with all of the mess and stress of this election that we will have a definitive answer on Tuesday night is pretty low, right? Also, election day, or from now till election day, please know your rights. Please look up who to call if you are the victim of election interference or intimidation. If you are in line and voting closes, they cannot kick you out. You have to be allowed to vote. It doesn't matter. It does not matter if voting hours have technically closed. If you are in line and you have been in line, they cannot stop you. You have to be allowed to vote. If they try to stop you, you have to look up your local numbers. Look up who to vote for, who you want to vote for. Look up the areas. In Chicago area, there are multiple voting guides that will talk Injustice Watch has a great guide for judges that you can look up the judges that are on your ballot, and you can look up the judges that will be on your ballot, and you can write that stuff down. Take a cheat sheet with you to your voting. If you're voting by mail, please take it directly to the post office or a voting location, because things are getting wild already. We've already in Washington state had someone set fire to and attempt to blow up ballot boxes, like two separate areas. So please be careful. Those things also increase your anxiety and stress, because that is anxiety provoking, that is stressful, right? you're not wrong for being anxious in seeing someone blow up a ballot box. That's fucked up. It is 150% absolutely fucked up. That is not, you're not doing something wrong because that makes you anxious. So day of, or, you know, tomorrow if you're voting early, Tuesday if you're voting on election day, give yourself that time and space. Consider taking off work, fam. Consider taking off work either, you know, Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever you need. I know not everyone can do that. I know that's a luxury. I know I have made the commitment to all of my clients I am working this week, and that I might work more if shit pops off. So I get it. Not all of us can take off, but if you can, consider taking off, especially if you need extra time to vote. Call in sick if you can. Again, another thing in this country that needs to happen is we need mandatory time off for voting. Especially if this system continues as is, because you know, I saw stuff where, like, voting lines, because the lines were so long, they were trying to close off voting lines. I think it was in Georgia. They were trying to close off voting lines at like 1 because the line was like 4 hours long. So please make your plan now. If you have not already voting, it will help you to decrease your anxiety and stress if you make your voting plan now, and then consider any backup options you may have. I'm lucky because I'm a morning person. I just wake up at 5 a.m. and I get there right when it opens at 6 and there's no line, right? I'm also in an area where, like, I don't know how often there's lines because I don't vote in the afternoon, but, like, find your polling place. Get there early if you can. Don't wait till after work to vote. I know that's a hard thing to ask sometimes, but if you can at all avoid it, vote before work. Get up at 6 a.m. and go vote at 6 a.m. Consider what you need for you and what the people around you need to manage your stress as we await results for various things, right? Depending on the state you're in, you may be waiting for, you know, results not just on the presidential, but on, you know, state or local mandates around abortion, around health care of all kinds, around clean water and things. So we don't want to bury our heads in the sand, but it is not avoidance to take a break. Taking a break is not avoidance. So please think about it. Think about whether or not you are gonna want to be alone, or whether you're gonna want some friends around you. My guess is that other people are gonna want something, right? My guess is that there may be events and things that you can go to or volunteer for, right? I'm having this stream right now because I know this is a thing. I know this is huge for a lot of folks, and it's been a lot and it's been heavy, and I've been like, oh God, what can I do? What else can I do? Because I you know, I do some things, but sometimes you still feel like it's not enough. But again, slow down, think about whether, like, what the definition of enough is. But this is something that I can do. I can talk about managing anxiety while still being active, while still, you know, doing your part and finding ways into being more active if that's your goal. So I'm doing this, and this is one of the ways that I'm helping, in addition to committing to getting my clients through the election before I take a break. Now, that is also because I have set boundaries around when it is time for me to take a break. Whole baby, I'm gone. I'm taking a break in December from work. I'll probably still be streaming because I'll be playing a lot of games, and I'll probably want to just like hang out on stream for a little bit. But when it comes to like work, because streaming is work for a lot of people, and that is very valid. Don't shit on streamers. We're great. And folks who stream full time, Herculean efforts. My God, support your full-time streamers, friends. But for me, streaming is a hobby. And so I don't mind sometimes hopping on live. I've also had days where it's like, I'm not getting on camera. I'm not streaming. I'm just going to play this game myself. Right? And that's fair too. But knowing that for yourself. When I go on break in December, I'm not seeing any clients. I'm not doing any contract work. I'm going to PAX. I'm working PAX, and then I'm deuces for the entire rest of the month. That's how I have for myself averaged out working the entire election season and the immediate month post election. Right? That's how I've balanced it for myself. What you need may be different. You may be like, cool, I'm working Monday and Tuesday and I'm taking the rest of the week off because I don't want to talk to my coworkers about this shit and they can't be trusted. Right? Okay. If you can do that, if that is a privilege you have, please take it. Please do. If that's not a privilege you have, acknowledging when you won't and when you will and won't engage in conversation with people, because work is not always the place to get into a heated debate about this fuck ass election. Your coworkers don't necessarily need to know who you're voting for and things, because while I'm all for having hard conversations and talking people through things, there are limits. And I am also for living to fight another day. Now, I am someone who has given up work and put myself in hardship because I just couldn't handle my values not being so heavily unreflected. I did that this year. It put me in a lot of hardship. I've also got a pretty strong community though, and I'm really lucky to not have drowned yet. But I'm not in nearly as a comfortable place in taking my time off, but I know if I don't take my time off, I'm not going to be able to keep doing this work. So again, martyrdom's not sexy. Empathy without boundaries is just self-destruction, y'all. So day of, make a plan. Make a voting plan. Plan out your votes. Bring yourself a cheat sheet so that you can go, you can vote, you can get in, you can get out. And then afterwards, know who you're spending time with. Do you have friends you can call? Are you going to do virtual hangouts? Are you going to stream? So that, so that you can do things. If you are going to stream, set up your blocked words, folks. Set up your moderation, because if you're streaming or watching streams in order to get some space from elections, right? Like, you're gonna want to put up those barriers so that that space remains that space. Because otherwise people are going to try and come in and talk about it. It's just like when people come in and they're like, oh, did you see so-and-so died? And it's like, why would the first thing you say in this chat be announcing a death? Like, it's not cool. And so we do, use those tools. Talk to your people. people in your community. Look at what election night events are happening. I know there's, some places are doing, election counter programming where they're not going to talk about the election results, and it's specifically so that people have a place to go where they can, take the time, de-stress, and then go to bed without having to handle that. So do think about it. Do think about what you want. Make that election plan. Make that post-election care plan for yourself. Hell, think about what you want to eat. What's your comfort food? Go buy it today. Right? Like, election night traffic's probably going to be shit. Go get your groceries now. Note to self. I haven't gotten groceries yet, and I really should do that. Or you know what? It might be, I'm doing what I'm doing right now. Maybe it's the week to order your groceries. Anything that you can't go grab somewhere like nearby and quick, if you have to go all the way to the big superstore and you're like, fuck that noise, order your groceries. Order them now. It's Sunday night. You can have your groceries Monday morning. Order your groceries now. Your comfort food, your snacks. Find out what your friends want. Have their shit delivered to your house too. Make a post-election care plan. And then information for a lot of election day. If you are really active, or you're interested in being really active, information for election day protests is already out. Information for post-election protests is already out for a lot of places and a lot of groups and organizations, especially ones tied to anti-genocide. If that's where you want to be, find those and start making your plans now. Make sure you've done your laundry, your nondescript clothes are washed and ready, your long sleeves and things. Again, know yourself. Find what you need and go for that. Because yeah, it is hard. It sucks. This election sucks that being anti-genocide is not reflected in either major party candidate for president is wild. Your anxiety and stress may also come from conscious or unconscious knowledge about your choice to vote or not to vote for a candidate who is pro-genocide but isn't the Cheeto. That doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good. There's not really a lot on the presidential level. There's not really a feel-good vote this year. I remember the first election that I got to vote in was Obama. And that was when I still didn't know enough and it was still early enough that felt like a feel-good vote. I felt like I was doing something. And for a lot of people, that doesn't exist this year. And that feels shitty. When people voted for Biden, some people felt that. Some people do feel that about Kamala Harris. But a lot of people don't. And if you're watching this channel, chances are you might not feel that way. If you do feel that way, okay. Regardless, again, there are so many things that you can do. There are a lot of things that are outside our power, yes, and we do need to accept those so that we don't get stuck on those, so that we can do other things, okay? So, we've been at this for 2 hours. We've talked about the overarching election anxiety, why it's anxiety provoking, why there's so much stress, what's happening, thousand mile overview of that. We've talked about just general anxiety and stress management on an individual and you know, other level. You can also on the helping other people too. If you have other folks in your life who are really anxious right now, you can help them too. You can breathe with them. You can co-regulate, right? You can just grab each other's hands. It's even better if you grab each other's kind of wrists, kind of like this, so that it's like over the pressure points, and breathe together, just looking at each other, or even sitting back to back with someone and breathing. You can do co-regulating things. You can help people. You don't have to be a mental health professional to lead a guided breathing exercise. You really don't. Peer support is important and valid. So part of a care community is helping each other too. So we've talked about those things. We've talked about care communities. We've talked about getting involved as a way to long-term help to manage and treat our anxiety and stress around how fucked up things are. We've talked about making election plans. We've talked about bringing your voting cheat sheet. We've talked about some resources and how to find them, looking for the kind of groups you're aligned with. You're like Women Voters and Injustice Watch, and if you're in Chicago, right, Girl I Guess, your Socialist Voting Guide or Progressive Voting Guide or your Democrat Voting Guide or whatever, and doing your research before you go to the polls, having your cheat sheet so you know what you're doing, and knowing how to look up, and on your cheat sheet also have the information for any in order to report any election interference or malfeasance, because there have already been reports across the nation of everything from setting fire to ballot boxes to people trying to ban people from voting or remove people out of line if they're wearing certain items of clothing, etc. So like including that information on your cheat sheet for your local area of your election board, and reporting for election interference. We talked about all of that. And we talked about after the election, the immediate after the election, the night, the next day, the next couple days, of like making a plan. Who do you want to be around? Who can help you? What do you need? Get your snacks, get your groceries, get your friends, get your family, get your whoever's, right? Get your movies or your video games, whether it's in person or virtual. If you're wanting to stream in order to provide a space and have a space for yourself to move away from elections, or to structure your own election updates, make sure that you're utilizing your moderation tools, right? Banned words, Nightbot reminders, talk to your mod team if you have one, etc. So at this point, I think that's really, and we talked about getting involved in protests and things like that as well, both before, during, and after, which is always a thing.